Welcome to the Bonded Podcast Foundation Series, hosted by Dr. Patty and Lizzie Shutt,
where we explore attachment healing and the bonds that shape us as children, as adults, and as parents.
We talk about the joy, the complexity, and the challenges that come with forming deep human connection.
From before conception through early childhood and far beyond.
Whether you're expecting, adopting, navigating loss, or supporting someone you love,
or simply wanting to better understand yourself and the ways your early experiences still impact you today,
these conversations are for you.
The podcast isn't just about raising secure children.
It's about healing ourselves, breaking generational cycles, and creating relationships rooted in safety, trust, and authenticity.
You'll hear from experts and parents alike on topics like fertility and perinatal loss,
adoption, returning to work,
temperaments, identity shifts,
and the emotional realities that often go unspoken.
So settle in,
take a breath,
and know that wherever you are on this journey, you're not alone.
You are not alone. Welcome back to the Bonded Podcast. Today, it's just going to be Patty and I as we reflect and reminisce and share the golden nuggets that we have learned throughout the last 2 months interviewing a variety of both clinicians and practical, the moms in our life.
Yeah, so I'd like to share some of the themes that you're going to hear. Number one is that there's no one right way to parent. Number two, that attunement over technique is critical. Number three, every child is unique. Number four, flexibility in parenting is a superpower. And number five, peace over perfection. So let's start off with this no one right way of parenting. I love this because we were chatting a little bit earlier, and I wonder if you want to share kind of your experience that you are sharing with me. I've obviously seen lots of people raise their children, but I feel like you're in an age right now where you're particularly attuned to this.
Yeah, I do want to have a family one day. And so I've really enjoyed interviewing families, but also getting to see the older cousins and friends in my life who are having kids and raising their families, and very differently too. So I've really gotten to see up close 2 different parenting styles. And what we were talking about is how, they actually have really been effective. And they have kids that are engaged in family and learning and developing along their milestones. Yet these families, it's not like everything was perfect. Different traumas with different kids and birth or kind of health things. So these families, it's not like everything's been smooth, but overall, the kids that I've gotten to play with and the parents that we get to chat with are really navigating family and the changing things that come with raising kids in a beautiful, graceful way. But this idea that there's not one right way to parent just feels like the main theme out of all the interviews. And we'll kind of dive into what the ways that we do see. So there's no one right way, but there are these kind of themes within each different way, that you take that does seem to support a child's development and their well-being.
And really the connection.
That's what it's all about.
That's right. So being able to see parents really choose different parenting styles with regards to things like their sleep, the child's sleep, and their feeding and education, and sort of how they arrange their routines, whether they are highly routined or they have flexibility in their routines, and how in many ways it's not necessarily those specific ways that they choose. It's really how they're doing it and how attuned they're really staying with the child, which leads us to number 2, right? Is really how important attunement is more than the technique, even with regards to sleep. as an example of really being attuned to what each child needs with regard to temperament. Some kids need a greater sense of being snuggled or held before they go to bed. Other kids are very quick to like just be like, okay, I'm tired. Yes, they have that independent temperament where they're like, they sort of want space and they don't need the warmth and the snuggling. And so that sense of really, no matter what style, whether the child is sleeping with you in bed or in a crib, that ultimately that attunement is really what matters. And knowing those signals, there are some really general signals that you see with kids. I saw a little schnittle the other day, and as she got tired, you could see the standard like rubbing her eyes, pulling her ears. So interesting as I watch these signals that can sometimes be really universal. And yet when parents they're able to really tune in to those really subtle ones that I think are important, particularly with regards to temperament and things like that. So I think what we've learned is how the parents are able to attune to those things and how responsive they are to them. That's what I think in terms of, one of the things that we've also learned about attunement, attachment, really cultivating secure attachment is that relationship. It isn't, attachment isn't like a child gets bonded like day one and there's a bond. It's actually really this
ongoing years and thousands of little interactions of, having a need as a baby and then getting that need met by a caregiver because they aren't fully able to take care of themselves yet. And so when that caregiver does respond or is willing to try and assess and attune, then the baby does feel like, okay, I can get my needs met when I ask for things. I have support. I'm acknowledged. I'm worthy of that love and attention. And so it really starts to build these positive belief systems. And
number 3 is so important. You've heard it probably on every episode, but this sense that everyone is different. So every baby, every child is different. If you're a parents who have 5 children, you're going to see how each and every one, they might share some similarities, some mannerisms, things like that they grow up conditioned around each other and those similarities. Ultimately, they are different. And I think that this is so critical with regards to how the parents are responding. Because if they have a different temperament or their nervous system requires more or less kind of stimulation to be able to feel safe or to be understood, and then that's something that parents who are able to be sensitive to that, and we just hope that all parents can recognize that. Even if you're parents of like teenagers right now, you might even reflect back on, oh my gosh, this is so true. I remember that. And you might not have necessarily used that knowledge while you were raising kids. And at the same time, you might have intuitively sort of adapted some of your parenting styles based on a sensitive child or.
Yeah, for sensitive kids, that was what was coming up for me of like, let's say your firstborn is pretty tough or not as sensitive. So you kind of get used to that, them being like really flexible and adaptable, or they can be in loud places, or, they're not as sensitive. And then let's say your next one is really sensitive and you hold that same expectation on that second child that, the first child was like this, like, why aren't you? And then some negative beliefs can be targeted at that child, like, oh, you're so sensitive. I know you experienced some of that talk from caregivers or family.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that, a whole nother kind of aspect of this is we have a lot of compassion, of course, for parents, even in understanding this, particularly when you have kids that are really, really extremely different, or maybe one that's very challenging. for the parents, it can feel really difficult as parents to sort of create this balance or this sense of fairness, particularly when one child might actually need more attention and more discipline or more of you, and another requires less, that then sort of staying attuned to the fact that just because they need less doesn't mean that they don't need anything.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot of parents really struggle with this and really just need a lot of support and compassion as well. And then our number 4 kind of theme that we have run across is how flexibility in a parenting style really becomes a superpower, particularly when you're raising children with different kinds of needs and different temperaments. That, you know, your first one might have gone to sleep and slept 10 hours right from birth. And number 2 requires very little sleep and is a cat napper. And that sense of really being able to recognize, number 1, you're not failing at this second one. It's not your fault. And number 2, it's not necessarily that there's something wrong with this child, right? Now, sometimes there could be, you know, like a parent sometimes check it out, you know, how are they feeding and, you know, kind of the scheduling of things and what kinds of needs there are. But generally, kids are going to be different. And it makes me think of like discipline and how some kids are you don't even need to, I think of you, right? My own kids, I would just say no once. And like, that was it with Lizzie. Okay. Even if she thought we would say no, she wouldn't even ask. Okay. Which I found out later in life. All right. But that's how really kind of easy it was to guide her and then came along number 2, who, you know, did not take no for an answer, right? She was going to push and push and push and required maybe even some more psychologically minded ways to navigate creating an environment for her that there weren't so many no's in, because she had a hard time with no. And so those kinds of things, that's a way in which I knew that I had to be flexible. And of course, you know, kids their nervous systems are really, really different too. And so different strategies, right, in calming, what they need. Some kids need activity to regulate themselves. Others really need quiet. No sound, no stimulation.
Exactly. They need to get the energy out, or they might just need to have that calming moment.
Yeah, I think when parents are staying open and curious and they recognize right from the get-go that not only are their children going to be different, but they're going to require the parents to do some things differently too.
Yeah, I think of parenting and raising a family as like one big experiment. And that's kind of the mindset that I'm taking in, is like, we're gonna try something today or with this child, and then we see how it goes. And if that feels like it's going well, then okay, that seems like a good system. But if it's not, let's be open to seeing what other approaches we could try.
Yeah. And I think this number 5, Lizzie, when you're a parent one day, is already taken care of, okay? Because this idea of really trying to do things perfect. And sometimes parents come at this with really, really great intentions. Like maybe they struggled or their life was difficult and they want to give their kids everything and they want to be the perfect parent so that everything goes well. And in reality, you do not need to be perfect. Okay. There is no perfect. In fact, the more that we strive for perfection or for things to look or be a certain way, the more anxious and uptight and stressed parents become, actually. So if we can let go of perfection and really, like Lizzie said, be more curious, be more open, be more flexible, it helps us to be more regulated. And the more regulated we are, the better off for kids in the long run. No matter.
And ourselves. Yeah. Stress is like a huge health marker. Is, you know, if your kids are stressing you out or you're striving constantly and causing a lot of stress, that is no bueno for your physical and mental well-being.
Yeah, I can hear some of the therapists who work with kids and teens. They often say to parents, do you want to be right or do you want to connect? And this sense of like having things be super rigid and how, in fact, being able to connect, which I think really means first being attuned, being curious, always builds connection, even if there's going to be a no at the end of it.
Yeah.
The fact that even a child benefits from a parent who is leaning in with curiosity, because that's already a more relaxed nervous system.
Exactly. That's what we're teaching, our teen parents, is that, you might really want them to get their homework done, but if you just start saying, do your homework, what are you doing? Get off your phone. That's not a great method. You should first kind of get curious and connect on their level rather than just always doing this power struggle of you'll do what I say and my way or the highway. It's like, well, let's actually get on their level. Let's see what's going on in their world, create that bridge of connection. And then, both your nervous systems are going to feel better. They're probably more likely able to listen then to what you're actually saying. And then you can have a conversation too, to even, is there something actually going wrong or not so great in their day? And that's why they're not doing their homework. And then you have that connection. And
yeah. And it can be hard to be a parent. Number one, even me being I was a psychologist as I was giving birth to my first baby, soon to graduate and become a psychologist. Many years of really studying child development and all of these things. There is still a learning curve of learning this child that the textbook doesn't say this is who you're going to give birth to, that they're a unique being. And I love that, even your approach to being like, this is going to be fun. This is going to be, I'm going to really experiment and get curious and almost like discover who is this being and how should I help them?
Yeah. Which just like so much of this, I am excited about our next episode that we're going to do because it really speaks to the parents.
Yes.
And I really think that in order to really allow your kid to just be who they are and to really allow you to discover who they are, you need to have your own needs met. Because I think parents sometimes can hope that their kid is going to fulfill their dreams or kind of do the things and be the perfect thing that they wish they were. And so they try to use their kid to fulfill themselves, which could be a recipe for disaster.
Yes. So thanks for that. Thanks for that plug for our next episode.
Or just doesn't allow them to develop into who they want to be. And that's my goal for everyone. So.
Yeah. So in summary, kind of what we really took, our 5 kind of points, the biggest one that Lizzie and I really heard again and again and again from everyone is that there isn't one right way. What actually matters is attunement, really seeing your child, recognizing that each child has a different temperament, a different nervous system, which really comes down to having different needs. And when parents become flexible and curious, especially with how they are relating and responding, instead of rigidly following a method, that they can become, the parents themselves become more peaceful, which ultimately creates a much more peaceful relational style relationship. Because the real goal is not perfection, it's connection.
Woo! Cheers to that. If you just take that away out of everything, that it's not about perfection, it's about connection. That is what the Bonded podcast is here to share.
Thanks.
We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If it spoke to you, it'll probably speak to someone you love too. Share it with a friend and leave us a 5-star review to help spread the message it's never too late to heal.